Hey everyone, it's Jananie and welcome back to my channel, The Story Ain't Over. Today I am bringing you a really awesome roundup of some of my favorite women in fiction. So these are main characters or even villains who I find inspiring and who just show how amazing it is to be a woman. And part of the reason I'm doing this video today is because International Women's Day is coming up soon and I thought it would be great to recommend some fantastic women in fiction. I've got a whole range of characters that I absolutely adore and I continue to find inspiration from as like a real life person myself. You know, their fictional lives give me inspiration. So I'm really excited to talk about each of them today, but before we get into this little roundup of books, I want to talk a little bit about the sponsor of today's video, which is Teddy Blake. And they are a really fantastic handbag brand, and this is one of their bags. It is the Ava Croc Gold in 11" in light gray, and they were kind enough to gift this to me, and it is one of my favorite bags to use now. They have a really nice variety on their website and like different colors of each of their bags, and they are some really nice luxury bags that you can get at a discounted price because they usually have a lot of sales going on throughout the year. So you can get up to 60% off from their website, and if you use the link in my description, you can also support me because it is an affiliate link, so I do get sort of a commission on those sales, which helps me continue to bring you these videos on a regular basis. So yeah, I highly recommend grabbing one of these bags for either you or a fantastic woman in your life or guy in your life, whoever is a handbag using person. And I honestly just love this bag. It's become my new like daily bag to use. It's also got a really nice shoulder strap as well, which I use constantly, and I think this gray color is just like perfect for this winter time in Canada because I'm usually just like bundled up in my jacket, so it's nice to have like a pretty bag to go along with the outfit. I know handbags aren't really a thing for a lot of people, but I know a lot of girls who love handbags. But I think there's a spectrum of us, which I love about just being a woman and a girl. We are so multifaceted and amazing. And today I just wanted to share all of my love for women. Alrighty, with that said, let's get into the books on this list and the fantastic women I admire. So the first one is probably no surprise because I've been raving about this book constantly. It comes out in April, so you guys should all go pre-order it now. I will leave the link down below. But that book is Kaigeyi by Vaishnavi Patel, and I love this book so much. It is definitely like my top book of 2022. I can already feel it, like probably my favorite book of all time, if I may be so bold to say. This book is similar to Circe, if you've ever read that book. I haven't, but I know sort of the narrative structure of it. And it follows the vilified queen Kaigeyi from the Ramayana, which is this ancient Hindu epic. It comes in many variations, but in most of the variations, Kaigeyi is seen as like this sort of evil stepmother character. She sort of serves that purpose in the story, and so she's been sort of painted in a bad light. But this book takes Kaigeyi's perspective herself from when she is a child until much later in her life during the events of the epic, and we are seeing her side of the story. And what I love about this book is that our main character is just so strong and resilient and is faced with so many unexpected things in her life, but soldiers on. And one of the things I love the most about this book is that it is so feminist and so amazing in the way that Kaigeyi is constantly working to uplift other women in her life and in her community and in her kingdom. And she's just a woman fighting for other women, which I absolutely adore and admire and think we all should adopt more of. So yeah, love Kaigeyi herself as a character and this book. And this book also features themes of motherhood, which I think were really interesting and really well done, whether that's interesting to you as a woman or not. But I just absolutely love how well crafted this book was. I cannot recommend this enough, so please go buy it and love it and rave about it with me, please. Alrighty, the next book or woman in fiction that I absolutely love is Beatrice from When We Left Cuba by Chanel Cleeton. So this is the second book in Chanel Cleeton's sort of Cuba saga. So they're all sort of companions to each other. But this book follows one of the side characters from the first book, Next Year in Havana, which is Beatrice, and she is such an amazing character and has like the coolest personality as well. In the first book, we are sort of meeting her much later in her life, but this book follows her when she's much younger after her family has left Cuba, and she has a lot of feelings of sort of vengeance and like hate towards the new regime in Cuba, and particularly Fidel Castro. And there's some spoilery things that I don't want to say to that point, but she is feeling a lot of things, and she ends up finding herself mixed up with the CIA in the States, and she's given the opportunity to sort of spy for them, and is also promised that she will get to assassinate Fidel Castro. And so this is the story of a woman who is like filled with vengeance and like hate and sadness for having left her home and is trying to make a space for herself as a woman. And there are big themes in this book of Beatrice not being able to do the things that she wants because of her gender. This book is set in 1960s Florida, but Beatrice's mother comes from like an older time and sort of a wealthier background where women don't really work and they don't go to higher education, but Beatrice is constantly fighting for wanting to go to higher education and, you know, go to university and be like the men in her life who have all this freedom. But there's also this sort of topic of like reputation and how women aren't afforded the luxury of sleeping around or doing as they please when it comes to their romantic and sexual lives the way that men are able to. So overall, this was just a fantastic book, and I loved following Beatrice as a character through multiple years of her life and just how strong and resilient she was, while also like being really funny and just charming as well. And she's also a woman who takes confidence in her beauty and her ability to charm men and uses that to her strengths, and I just absolutely love that. So she is a character, someone I admire absolutely, and this book was just fantastic overall. Alrighty, the next book has two women that I really admire, and that book is The Beautiful Ones by Silvia Moreno Garcia. So technically, this book is a bit of a love triangle, I would say, and it is set in sort of a historical France and involves sort of a Pride and Prejudice-ish situation of like finding a husband and all this stuff and like the different society, you know, functions and that kind of thing. And this book is actually told in three different perspectives. So one is Nina, who is this young girl who is like entering society and trying to find a husband and that kind of thing. And then there is Valerie, who is Nina's like older cousin, who is this like well-married woman who has all this experience and who kind of doesn't really like Nina because she finds her annoying and too naive. And then we have Hector, who is this entertainer and also a bit of a magician, like actual magic magician. This book has a little bit of a fantasy element to it. And what we learn as we are entering this book is that Hector and Valerie used to have a relationship back when they were younger, but because of certain circumstances, they were sort of ripped apart, and now Hector is trying to get back at Valerie through Nina. But this book is really cool in the way that it takes this initial premise and sort of flips it on its head, and the way that things end up, you're like, wow, I love this progression of like how people's emotions and feelings about each other can change so drastically. So in that way, it feels a lot like Pride and Prejudice, but regardless of sort of this love triangle going on, I actually really love the two female main characters in this book, so Nina and Valerie, and both of them are very different. One is more experienced and sort of more of a villain in the story, I would say, and then one is more naive and has this like rosy outlook, but is shown that she can't really trust people as well. And I just love seeing this range in the type of characters they were. And I feel like both of them were just really strong in their own way. They had their own reasons for doing what they did, and they were both very strong women as well. This is a really great book if you're looking for a really amazing romance and also just like some really multifaceted characters and just wonderful writing, so highly recommend. On the note of Silvia Moreno Garcia, I feel like she always writes some really fantastic women in her books, and I also really loved her book Mexican Gothic and our main character Noemi. This book is set in 1950s Mexico in the countryside, and it follows Noemi, who receives this like missive from her cousin who's recently gotten married to this like English lord or something, and they live in this like manor home in the countryside. So she receives this letter from her cousin who is saying that there are like ghosts walking through walls and strange things happening in the house. And Noemi isn't really sure if her cousin is going insane or if she's actually unsafe. And so she ends up going to visit her cousin in High Place, like the home that she lives in, and ends up meeting the family of people that she's married into. And as time goes on, things get a little bit creepy and scary and horrific. And this is a gothic horror. And this ended up being like one of my favorite books of 2021. It is a fantastically written book. But one of the things I really loved about it was Noemi as a character. I think she is just such a strong character, like really sticks to her guns. And she also has a really confident personality and doesn't take people's shit, which I really, really love. But she's also very compassionate and really cares for her cousin and is trying her best to survive in this sort of society that doesn't really value women as well. This is a great one if you're looking for like a bit of a horror, a bit of a gothic story, but also with a really strong, amazing main character. Alrighty, the next book that I have is also another favorite from a previous year, and that is The Henna Artist by Alka Joshi. And this book features one of the most enterprising and amazing women I've ever seen in a book, and that is Lakshmi, our main character. So this book is actually set in 1950s in India, in Jaipur, and it follows our main character Lakshmi, who is in this arranged marriage that ended up being very abusive, and she ended up fleeing it and coming to Jaipur. And in Jaipur, she ended up setting up this henna business where she does henna on the wealthy women in Jaipur and has made it into this very lucrative thing that has made her very independent in this society that like usually expects you to have a husband and, you know, care for him and not have your own thing going. But Lakshmi's position is quite precarious because one wrong word from one of these women who she works for could completely ruin her reputation and like prevent her from working in Jaipur. But amidst all of this, a wrench is thrown in Lakshmi's independent life when a younger sister she never knew she had appears in Jaipur, and she is forced to sort of take her in and take care of her. But her younger sister is a bit of a handful and she gets herself into some trouble, and Lakshmi is sort of forced to bail her out at every moment and also deal with how it has like repercussions on her own reputation and her independent life. There's also a bit of a romance in this book, but like very, very low key and like not a big focus. I feel like the main focus of this book was on Lakshmi as a character, and I think she was such an inspiring character who you really wanted to root for, and I feel like by the end I was like, oh my god, I want her to succeed. Like I just want the best for her because she is doing her best. She's trying her best. Alrighty, the next fantastic female that I want to talk about is Rin from the Poppy War. Rin is a character that I cannot help but like have in my Hall of Fame because she is so unhinged. She's a main character that you can't help but root for because she's the type of person who will go to the ends of the earth to make what she wants happen. From the beginning of the book, from when she's a young child to much later on when she is a soldier of the Empire and also a powerful magic user, she is just someone who seems larger than life and kind of like a hero. But she's also a character that is super, super complex. She's dealing with addiction throughout the series, and she's also dealing with a society that really doesn't want her to succeed. Her problems not only stem from being a woman in a military context, but also from the fact that she is a poor villager entering a very wealthy academy at the beginning of the series. And I think overall, Rin is just such an interesting character to root for, but also one that you recognize as being completely unhinged and still loving her the same. I think Rin can be both inspiring as someone you want to be, but also as an example of what you should not be. And I think that that is a like depth to her character that I love. Alrighty, the next book is a bit of an intergenerational story with many fantastic women in it, but there's one in particular that I really want to talk about. So that book is The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina by Zoraida Cordova, and the character that I want to talk about is actually Orquídea Divina, who is sort of our main character and main driving force of the story. Basically, this book follows the descendants of Orquídea Divina when they are called back to their home in Four Rivers, where Orquídea Divina has said that she is about to die and that she wants them to come and collect their inheritance. And so they all sort of travel over there and notice that the house is dying and that Orquídea is dying and that she has also turned partly into a tree, and things sort of unfold from there as sort of Orquídea's legacy is imbued in all of these characters, and they're forced to realize that there's a lot more to her life that they didn't know about. The book also has many chapters from Orquídea's past before she came to the United States, and from there we sort of learn a lot about her past and what happened to her to make her become the person that she is today, and also the sort of sinister things that happened in her past that are affecting her now. This book is full of magical realism and it is just an enchanting read overall, but I think following Orquídea through her life in many of those chapters was just so enchanting to me because I think she's such a strong and resilient character who is sort of unloved by many of the people in her life at a young age and is trying to just make her way in the world. If you're looking for a bit of an intergenerational story with just a really strong matriarch to a family, this is definitely the book to pick up. Alrighty, finally I have a couple romance books on this list with some main characters I adored. So the first one is The Kiss Quotient by Helen Hoang. I read this recently and absolutely fell in love with it, but I particularly fell in love with our main character Stella, who is just a wonderful human being who is just trying her best, and I think that is just so admirable. Stella is an econometrician and she is also on the autism spectrum, and she's the type of person who really loves her work and can get wrapped up in the intricacies of it. But I think what I love about Stella the most is that she's the type of person who wears her heart on her sleeve. She's not the type to sort of board herself up and sort of harden herself to the world. She's very much an open person and open to being vulnerable, especially for the people that she loves. And I think that she was such a compassionate character that I couldn't help care for and root for. This is definitely a book that has a really adorable romance, and just seeing Stella evolve over the course of the book was just amazing to watch. Alrighty, the final book and woman I want to talk about is Olive from the Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. This one has been a very popular romance book recently, and although I absolutely love the romance of this book and just the overall vibe of it, I think what really stood out to me in this book was our main character and sort of the things that she goes through in this book. While this book is 100% a romance, it does delve into the topic of women in STEM and the struggles of being a woman in STEM. And there are particular plot points that come into play in the second half of the book that really examine this point. And I think seeing the main character Olive's strength in the face of all of this and her resilience and the way that she really stands up for herself was just so admirable and inspiring to watch. Olive herself is a very compassionate character as well. She really cares about her research, and she has really amazing reasons for why she is in the particular field she is in. Overall, this is a really amazing and cute romance with like a fake dating aspect to it, but I also just really loved Olive as a character and the messages that this book conveys. Alrighty, with that said, those are all the books that I want to talk about on this list. I did have more that I wanted to talk about, but I didn't want this video to get too long. There are so many fantastic women that I'm constantly reading about in books that I find so admirable and inspiring, and that inspire me to do better in my own life. They help me believe that I can do anything, and I think that that's just an amazing thing to have in books. I encourage you all to pick up these books because the books themselves are just fantastic as well. And I would love to hear from all of you if there are any fantastic women in fiction that you adore and that you think I should go read about. And as always, don't forget to check out my Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, and TikTok in the description down below. And I will see you guys in my next video. So please remember that this story ain't over. Bye!